landscaping here catches your eye the minute you pull in. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, that's got to take a little bit of time and a little bit of work.
It does. So, we have the little vineyard out front, and we use that vineyard for the wines. It's our Petit Verdot vineyard, but we also like to keep it nice and, kind of a high quality, high visual aspect winery. So when people come in, their first impression is that it's a nice place, well kept.
Obviously, you have some of your own grapes here, but you also buy grapes elsewhere, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we do 100% Livermore Valley, so we source our grapes 100% from the vineyards around Livermore. We have different kinds of vineyards. So, some of the larger block vineyards are farmed by large vineyard managers, and then I buy tonnage or blocks of the fruit. And with those, we do still have some control over those vineyards and how they're farmed. And then we get to pick the harvest date, and they're all hand harvested. And then there's some other vineyards that are smaller family-owned vineyards. And so I have my own vineyard manager. So he manages those vineyards. So we work together and manage them to the quality that we want for the wines that we're making.
When it comes to getting grapes from somewhere new, and again, speaking from a very naive point of view,
yeah.
Is this a casual thing where you get together for dinner, you get together, you meet? Is it word of mouth, hey, there's some tonnage available or there's some vines available? How does that work for you when you're picking up a new vineyard?
Yeah, that's a good question. Many of the vineyards I source from, they're very, very high quality vineyards, and I've been sourcing from those vineyards since we started the winery back in 2007. So I don't change vineyards a lot, but obviously we do from time to time for various reasons. We're a very small, tight-knit wine community here in Livermore Valley, and so I know most of the winemakers, all the winemakers. We know most of the growers around the valley, and as winemakers talk, and we know what the high quality vineyards are. So then whenever, let's say Sauvignon Blanc, I had to change Sauvignon Blanc vineyards a couple years ago, I would talk to some of the local winemakers about the different areas and then talk to the growers to see what fruit's available from those blocks. So yeah, it's very, I would say it is informal, but it's because it's a tight-knit community, we all kind of collaborate and help each other out. And and so then as far as the actual contracts go and that type stuff, that varies widely between vineyard to vineyard. Some of the larger blocks, we have formal agreements in place. Some of the smaller blocks, it's verbal or we do it through email. So it really varies amongst vineyard to vineyard.
Are you tasting the wines from there? Are you going there and just simply sampling the grapes? Is it a soil survey? How do you go about that?
Yeah, good question. I'd say I'm a little bit of both. I mean, looking at the vineyards can tell you a lot. You can look around the vineyards of Livermore, and the ones that are well kept, well groomed, there's no weeds, they're well trellised, the leaves are pulled, and then you've got other vineyards that are more kind of not so well taken care of. That's the first indication right there of the quality of the vineyard and how well it's being managed. So that's one piece. The other piece is, who is managing the vineyard. So, there's certain growers in the area that have certain reputations. That's part of it as well. And then, from time to time, if we can taste them, any time I want to taste any vineyard in Livermore, I can go to the winery that's sourcing the grapes from there, and the winemaker's more than happy to do barrel tasting with us or give a bottle to try or whatever. And of course, we reciprocate on that. So, I'd say it's a little bit of all of the above, really.
Your particular journey into wines, it's one of those questions I ask everybody. Did you have a moment? Were you raised in a wine-loving family? How did you end up heading this direction?
Yeah, I always lead by saying it's a hobby gone wild. So, what happened was my wife and I have always been into wine, and we would take regular trips up to Napa and Sonoma and do wine tasting and eat the great food and go bring friends and family. And it was kind of a social thing that we like to do. And that's kind of how we got the bug, I guess, for wine. And then back in 1999, we decided to try to make our own home winemaking wine. So we lived in Fremont at the time, which is about 30 miles from here. And we made a barrel of wine in our garage. And I had a mentor. It was a friend of my wife's up in Healdsburg, and he actually had a small vineyard, 3-4 acre vineyard, and he was real active in the wine community up in Healdsburg. And so he kind of consulted me along the way and gave me the ABCs for winemaking. So the first couple of batches were made in our garage in Fremont. And that's kind of how we got into the winemaking. We moved to Livermore in 2000. Got to know a bunch of the winemakers here and the growers here. We built a barrel room in our garage and planted a small vineyard on our property. And at that time, the wine started getting better and better because I started to kind of know what I was doing a little bit. The grapes were better, and I was doing a better job on the winemaking process. It was in a cool barrel room environment. So then that was still home winemaking. And then in 2007, we had met some friends here in Livermore that had a garage that they built as a winery, so it was air conditioned, insulated, had drainage, and they said, "Hey, if you want to, really get into this, you can lease us this garage from us." So we leased the garage, and then moved our production there, which was small at the time, but we were able to get it bonded by the federal government and the state government, and started as a full production winery. So 2007 was our first harvest at the commercial winery, and the garage under commercial bond per se. And then we actually started. We had our first release event in 2008, and that was the first time we sold it legally.
So I wanted to talk to you about your name, Cuda Ridge. I have a couple of guesses, but I'd rather hear it come from you. Where did that name have its birth?
So that's a whole story in itself. So we're named after my car. So I have a 1970 Barracuda.
A 70?
And
wow.
It's a 1970, yeah, and it's plum crazy purple. So if you look at our label is plum crazy purple, and there's a subliminal drawing on our label. It looks like a ridge, but it's really a drawing of the car if you look closely. So it's all kind of subliminal messaging here. But the way the story goes is we were doing the home winemaking in our garage in Fremont, as I mentioned earlier. And we wanted to move out of Fremont for a variety of reasons. And we were looking at some property up in the Sonoma area, up in Windsor, which is right by Sonoma. And we actually put an offer on a 5-acre piece of property there. And the offer was within $20,000 of what they were asking. And so the real estate agent calls me up. We drive from Fremont. We go all the way up to Sonoma. Traffic was awful. It was like a 2.5-hour drive. And we finally get up there, and the first thing the real estate agent says is, "Well, on the property, they're not going to negotiate on it. You got to take it or leave it for what they're asking." And I figured we were going to agree in the middle, and $20,000 was no big deal. But the way that they said it to me, kind of knocked me the wrong way. And I said, "Well, you could have told me that over the phone. I didn't have to drive all the way up here." I said, "We could have still probably done the deal, but I just said, well, if that's how they are, they can keep the property." So we decided not to sign the contract, and we're driving home. And so then as we're going through Sonoma, I see this Cuda on the side of the road and had a for sale sign on it. And so I told my wife, I said, he says, "We can't get that property. I would like to get this car." And she goes, no, over my dead body. I said, "Well,
that's a real lousy negotiation right there, Larry."
I said, "Well, let's go into the bar. let's find the guy and just talk to him and see what he's asking for it. So we go in, I walk into this bar, asked a bunch of people who had this car out front that was for sale, found the owner of the car, and then we decided to buy the car. I guess I decided to buy the car on the spot. So then, it needed some work. It was not in the greatest of shape. So then we brought it home to Fremont, and we were making the wine in our garage. And I had the Cuda in the garage, and we were restoring the Cuda in the garage next to the wine barrel.
I want to be clear on one thing when you say we were restoring. Is that a fact?
Well, that would have been me.
Okay.
My wife has some stories with the car, too, that she's not too fond of, but yes. So that was me restoring the car. And then, the first batch of wine, the first barrel of wine was ready to be bottled. So we were having a party at our house, and we had all these friends here. And we're trying to figure out what we're going to name this wine. And our last name's Dino, so my wife goes, well, let's call it Dino's Vino. And I go, well, it's got a good rhyme. I go, but it doesn't sound like very good wine. She went on to tell me that the wine was not very good. It tasted like the car. And she was not far off, I will admit. And I said, yeah, but someday the wine's going to be good, so we don't want to be stuck with that name. So then my buddy, who's a car enthusiast, and he has Mustangs, he goes, Larry, why don't we call this Cuda Ridge? I said, oh, I love that, Mark. That's a great idea. So then I convinced Margie that Cuda Ridge with the story of the car, this was kind of fun. So then we would, for home winemaking, we always just take a picture of our car and put that on the label. So then when we got bonded in 2007, we worked with our graphic designer. We said, we got this story around this car. Can we design the label and the story and theme around the winery around that? So that's how Cuda Ridge Wines was formed.
For our listeners who'd like to visit here, would they need to make an appointment? Can they just come on in? How does that work?
Everyone's welcome. They can just come on in. We do have online reservations, and we do recommend to look at that because if we have an event, we could be very busy. Sure. So if you make a reservation, you can make sure you can get in. But normally we can take everybody in all the time. So
if they want to learn about you online, what is your website?
Oh, good question. That's www.cudaridgewines.com.